Okay, so tonight we're going to trim a foot on a straight cylinder. Everyone should have some straight cylinders like this, which are ready for trimming the foot on. So the first thing is, in order to do a trimmed foot, the piece needs to be basically level and centered on the wheel so that you can trim it effectively. If the top edge of your cylinder is not level, like one side is slightly higher than the other, this could be because you intended for it to be that way, or it can be because of something got off center in the throwing process. You can even it out in one of two ways. One is to cut the top rim off with your needle tool, in the same way that you would a wetter cylinder in the throwing process. And the other is to add a coil of clay onto the top of the piece and then turn it over. And this is going to make the side that was previously lower have the opportunity to be level with the rest of the pot. Now you still have to level, make sure that the top, the bottom part of the pot, which is facing upward, is level. So you'll have to try it out and then push down until where you've added the coil is level with the rest of the pot. So mine does not need that. So I'm going to start by getting it to the center of the wheel. So to get the piece centered, I'm going to turn the wheel on very slowly, and I'm going to sit up straight and brace myself. I have my arm braced with my elbow against my side so that my finger is pretty stable, and it just becomes kind of like a guide so I can see if I have the pot centered in the middle of the wheel, and I don't at this time. So what I'm going to do is when the pot comes around and touches my finger, then I'm going to push it away from where my finger touched it straight across the wheel, and I'm going to do this in gradual movements until the pot itself is centered in the middle of the wheel. So I'm also centering the very top of the pot where the foot is, not the rest. I mean, some of your pieces may be, especially very early cylinders, may be doing very different things in all parts of the pot. So I'm trimming a foot on the base, and so I'm only concerned with the base being centered. So this is a little bit of a tedious and slow process, but by using my finger as a guide this way, I can get the piece completely centered. Okay, let's see. One more tiny adjustment. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to use balls of clay and secure it pretty steadily to the wheel head. You want the wheel head to be dampened, not super dry, and I'm using a plastic bat, so it's much slicker, but if you're using a masonite bat, make sure it's dampened. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut away any excess clay off the edge. And you can see the way that I have my hands positioned. My body's braced as always. One hand is riding on the top of the piece that is being trimmed and touching my other hand, which is holding the trimming tool. And so I'm starting by just taking off some excess clay right on the outside edge. Okay, so there are very many different styles of foot rings or footed areas of a pot, and this is an opportunity that you have as a designer to kind of design the look that you like. It can be very minimalist and basically just be a cleaned off edge, kind of like this, or it can be a very dramatic foot. I'm going to show you how to carve in a very defined foot, and then over time you can develop your own style with this. The thing that I want to do first is I want to really start to cut in on the pot so that I start having a shape of a foot that is, so you can start seeing the bottom edge of the pot being defined differently than when it was just cut off the wheel. One thing that I also do is I like to be aware before I start trimming a foot how much excess clay I have, how thick is the bottom. And I can do this by tapping and listening. I can hear where it starts to get thicker. And this is something that it's something that I do and I've always done it. It may not work for you, but When I do that, I see that I have excess clay to about right here, so I don't want to cut in farther than that. So I continue by like defining the shape on the edge. I'm going to use this tool. A lot of you are having the opportunity to try it out in class. This is a good way to get some of the excess clay off. And basically, as I said in class, I'm going to decide the shape that I want and really just move my trimming tool kind of in that direction. So I'm trimming off a little bit of the edge, kind of rounding up the bottom, very bottom wall of the piece itself. And I have created a defined foot here. I have created a line, you can see. This I'll use later when I'm glazing. I like for the bottom of my glaze areas to be very defined and have a very straight line, and so this helps me do that. The next thing that I do is cut away some clay from the very middle, the bottom of the pot, and this is where I can add my signature, but it also can make a nice detail on the bottom as well as remove some extra clay. So with this, I have cut into it. You can do this with any kind of trimming tool that you may have. And now I'm going to just cut away excess clay, kind of in the same way that you compress the bottom when you're throwing a pot on the inside, you compress the bottom. I'm just going back and forth across the surface of the piece, taking away some excess clay. So there you have it. This is one way to trim a foot. It's not the only way. We'll cover different possibilities for this. Final thing that I do, I stop it and I kind of give it a look about if I like the form. And in this particular case, I think I could remove a little bit more clay from these edges and it would improve the form. Looking at the form of the whole piece when I'm thinking this way. And once I get this excess clay off, then I'm going to take a minute and burnish this area that I have trimmed so that it doesn't have this mechanical look. So I have these great throwing rings, and then this part here where it's trimmed, it looks kind of mechanical. So I take that away by using my thumbnail and my fingertips, just rubbing against it. My thumbnail kind of can take away dramatic lines, just burnishing it, and then I kind of can go back over it with my fingertips as well. So this just makes it have kind of a similar feel to the rest of the pot instead of being kind of mechanical and choppy like it can from the throwing tool. So some other options that you have, you can decorate your pot a little bit while it's in this just with some carved rings. So this is going to be a very straightforward thing, but you can take a straight cylinder to another level just by adding some trimmed rings. You can add vertical lines in this, and which can be a carved decoration. You can make this lots of different options. So I'm going to show you also how to put slip on a pot and carve through the slip. That will be in a later video. So happy trimming. See you in class soon.